In reality, some books we read so that we don't get FOMO. Hello friends, my name is Chloe. I am a recovering book snob. Welcome to my channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're sitting at a very casual angle. I'm on my swivel chair. And I'm drinking a double IPA. For someone who doesn't know what an IPA is, I would describe this as like especially a double IPA. It's like a scary beer. Like I wouldn't recommend it if you're not sure about beer. Usually I drink tea, so I just thought it was worth mentioning because it's pretty crazy. I wanted to take this time to talk you through all of the books that I've read this year so far. I feel like BookTube is a highly competitive place and it's very easy to get sucked into feeling like you have to read so many books to qualify as a reader or to qualify as a booktuber, and I'm proud to announce that I have read 9 books so far this year. Some of them were pretty long, to be fair, but that's not the point, you know? The point is that that's how many books I felt I could happily read in that time. I do plan on upping my rate a bit more, but as someone who is a recovering book snob, as I mentioned, I feel very strongly that I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to set myself lofty goals. So 9 books it is, and in this video I'm going to take you through them from worst to best. Coming in at 9th place is Frankenstein. I really didn't like Frankenstein. Frankenstein is a story about a scientist who creates a creature that is kind of not quite human, but it's meant to be based off the human form, except it's really ugly. It's like a really ugly creature. And the creature never gets a name. It's just called like the monster and all this stuff. And that's very intentional because we're meant to kind of not really like it, or at least Frankenstein, the scientist, hates it so much that he doesn't even kind of name his own offspring. And the rest of the book is basically Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster in a kind of strange, like chasing each other duel type situation. I found it difficult to read. I didn't really like the prose. To be fair, it was published in 1818, so it is just that bit longer ago. So I found the language quite challenging, but the protagonist was the scientist Frankenstein, and I really didn't like him, but not in a fun kind of let's just hate on this character, but you kind of love to hate him. Like I just hated him. I found him kind of self-involved and really terrible at accepting consequences, to the point where like I found some bits funny that I don't think should have been. So I found Frankenstein to be a drag, but I know that a lot of people really like Frankenstein, and I'm objectively wrong in the eyes of a few big Frankenstein fans. For those who do like it, I'm curious as to why, but for me, it's number 9. Number 8 is a book called Forever. It is actually intended for teenagers, I think, and kind of young adults. And I, despite my really good skin, am not a teenager. It's about a teenage girl who falls in love with a teenage boy, and it just focuses on their romance essentially, and it's meant to explore kind of young first love where you think you're going to be together forever. I do think that although I rated it low, it is a really good book for that age group. I'm really surprised that it was published in the 70s because it was pretty sex positive. The characters had depth and I loved that. Apparently it's meant to be like it was a teen classic for 70s teenagers, and it was banned from a lot of school libraries because of a sex scene. So that's pretty salacious, pretty fun. Next up, we've got Where the Crawdads Sing. This was the first book I read this year. It's about a girl called Kaya who is growing up in kind of 1960s America, and she's part of the group that is called like the marsh people. They live in the marsh where the land is really horrible, like really hard to farm. They're kind of off the grid. She has a really terrible upbringing, and then when she grows up, she becomes hot. Which is quite important to the plot, and she ends up in these kind of romances, and then she is accused of the murder of one of the people in the town, one of the men in the town. And the book follows that court case, but it's also there's a lot of playing with timelines. I enjoyed the writing in this book to a point. It was riveting. Like, I was engaged with some elements of it. I was curious as to what was going to happen. I did care about some of the characters, but I found the depiction of the main character to be the most manic pixie dream girl, very cliched. I really didn't enjoy some of the like romance scenes I thought were written. They were a bit weird, and just the framing of it all just didn't sit right with me. When I was researching the book after I read it, apparently the author based it on a real life thing that happened on their estate, which was like a game reserve. So yeah, it's rated pretty low. I didn't love the book, and it turns out it has a pretty dodgy context as well. Next up, we have The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I did like it. Like, it was, I liked it, you know. For those who don't know, somehow, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button is about an old man who is born an old man and then ages backwards and becomes a child, a baby. I really enjoyed how this book surprised me. So, well, first of all, it's a short story, which surprised me, but that's one reason why I kind of am recommending it, because it's very short. So even if you don't like elements, it's kind of just worth the read because it's pretty unique and it's fun to kind of just know, like, you're avoiding FOMO if you've read The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And in reality, some books we read so that we don't get FOMO. But yeah, I enjoyed how it looked at life. It was clearly quite a sweet story about living every day as it comes and making the most of your situation. What I found interesting is that it's obviously a weird concept, but the way people responded to Benjamin Button was interesting. Like, that wasn't what I expected. That made for some quite interesting little moments, some quite interesting storylines. Next up, we've got Beautiful World, Where Are You? And as a disclaimer, we're now heading into books that I think I liked. So these are solid. Let me tell you, I always forget to tell you what it's about first. Sorry. Disaster. So it's about two friends, Eileen and Alice, and they've known each other since college, and they both struggle with communicating with people in quite different ways. They're pretty depressed about the state of the world, and you find out about this through letters that they send to each other. And then meanwhile, they both have these kind of little love stories going on. I went into this book a little bit pessimistic because I've watched Normal People and I found it a little bit tiresome, but Beautiful World, Where Are You? I thought was really lovely, and the writing was really good. Like, I do get it. She describes things so vividly, with so many kind of details. She captures the awkwardness of interactions and the kind of tiny unsaid things very, very well. Next up, we have Mad Honey. It's based in the US and it follows kind of two parallel families. Both are kind of single mothers for different reasons who've moved to this area that's kind of a bit quiet with their kids. So one has moved with her son, the other has moved with her daughter, and they've moved there in hopes of like a better life. The kids start going out and then things go south very quickly and it becomes a kind of courtroom drama told through the eyes of lots of different people and through lots of different flashbacks. So, and it's quite a long book as well, but despite that, it is a very riveting read. It's a relatively kind of easy to read book. Like, you do kind of fire through the pages quite quickly. There's a good amount of suspense and tension, and yeah, you care about the characters. It's just one of those things, I think, once books get longer than a certain length, you're gonna have to really convince me that it was necessary that it was this long. So there was a small part of me that was a bit grumpy about that, but overall, I really enjoyed it. Okay, we're heading into the top three. At number 3, we have Bunny. Bunny is a book about a girl doing her master's program, and it's a very kind of elite master's program in writing. And her 4 other classmates, her kind of only 4 other classmates, a very small class, they are women who are very cutesy and they all call each other Bunny. Our protagonist, Samantha, absolutely hates them, and you know, she's not like the other girls, and it's just her and her friend Ava against the world until she gets invited to join this group of girls. This book quickly descends down the rabbit hole at a very rapid pace. It's very engaging, and I just found it very imaginative and very interesting. And the reason why it's ranked quite highly, and I am pretty obsessed with it, is because it kind of ignited my imagination and my love for reading pretty ferociously. I know that a lot of people have criticized it because they feel that it gets a little bit too crazy. Like, there are a lot of twists and turns. It's all a bit, you sometimes start to question what's real, and it's one of those kind of books. But I thought that was delicious. I felt like it was actually quite easy to read, and the parts that were confusing were meant to be confusing. I would say please read this book, but relax into it. Just like relax into the fact that some stuff's weird, you know, because I think the problem occurs when you're desperately trying to understand every detail. It made me want to kind of read a few more horror books, because this feels like light horror. It's kind of slightly culty. Coming in at number 2, we have Fleabag the Scriptures. This book holds a really special place in my heart. I watched the series twice before I read the book, and this book is actually the kind of TV and stage script and directions, not stage, sorry, just TV script and directions of the series. Obviously, like, I knew what was going to happen. The reason why I love this book, I mean, like the series, the characters are just so well developed. The way it handles kind of grief with humour is just so intelligent. Fleabag is about a woman approaching her 30s, or in her early 30s, whose best friend has just died. Her mum has also died relatively recently, and she's in a very kind of self-destructive spiral. I think the things that I took away were the family relationships. I think what was really cool about reading the scripts was seeing how each character was described, because when they're first introduced they get described in their appearance, and obviously a lot of the time, like, it'll just match the cast, but there are these really fun details that you're kind of privy to when you read the scriptures, and it's really cool kind of comparing your interpretation to what's actually written down. Like in this case, I would actually recommend watching the series before reading the book. So yeah, all in all, just a book and a TV series that I will never stop talking about. And so you're probably asking, how did a book come out on top of Fleabag? Well, East of Eden in first place. While Fleabag was incredible, East of Eden is a book that I have not stopped thinking about, to a point that is just wild. And I kind of expected this when I finished it, but it just speaks to what it means to be human in a way that is so timeless, and I am so impressed by how relevant it is to today. The writing is just beautiful. It is a multi-generational tale, and it tells the story of a lot of people. It's quite a long book, and it's based on the tale of Cain and Abel, which is the Bible story where you have two brothers. One is God's favourite. The one who isn't God's favourite gets jealous, kills the brother who is God's favourite, and he is ultimately forgiven. The story is really based on mostly kind of brotherly relationships and father relationships, but you do still have very interesting female characters. It's very timeless in that sense, but it also is a very kind of like intense tale of like what it means to be a person, and like everyone's flawed, and like being, you know, you can choose to be good or bad, and you're not defined by like one action, and that's why it's number one, guys. That's why it's number one. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully next time we'll have like a marginally better angle. Unless you liked this angle, let me know if you liked this angle. I need to actually like decide what I'm reading into the future. I think I'm gonna make a video about like a bit of a TBR, in part because I think it'd be fun to communicate it to you guys, but also because I don't have enough structure. I'm reading pretty randomly at the moment, and I think I could do with a little bit of structure. I think I'm ready to have a TBR and a bit of structure and not like crumble under the pressure. So look forward to that, I guess. Thank you for watching. Have a lovely week. Goodbye.